When was the last time I cast Highview English? I feel like I'd have to go months back. You actually just don't see it anymore. This is a civ that has really been relegated to Altai, actually. That's more or less it, right? If you think about the default maps in Q right now, people are just whipping it out in Altai frequently, and that's more or less it. Chinese, English, always there. Never here, though. French occasionally on Highview, but gotta say, right now, French is mainly dictated by the Rus, the Delhi, and occasionally a little bit of Mongol / Abbasid. But let's see what's going to happen here, because B, of course, is going to be whipping out the English. I remember him doing this in the good old days. Loves to just drag out to the hyper late game, but not sure he's going to get there for free. Lenok is whipping out the French, and I feel like this is one of Lenok's most effective maps for the French. Thinking of the way he plays and thinking of what I've seen historically from him, I think he does incredibly well on Highview with the French. The weird part, I mean, maybe this is controversial, I actually think his Highview French is more effective than Dry Arabia. I don't think that's an insult. I think he just has a very interesting way in playing the map, and he's much better at leveraging these heavy cavalry units with Stealth Forest. Having said that, Stealth Forest was very generous to be in this game. I mean, this is the highest view. Like, I'm a little bit perplexed because he has a lot of open field with open vision, which is very important against the French because you don't want to get exploited. Like, look at his gold. His gold is nowhere near Danger Town, even the Woodline as well. So, overall, he got a great vision start. But where he is going to suffer is look at the Woodline spawns afterwards. Oh, Le Mercy, please. This is unfair, actually. Lenok got 4 Woodlines that are not in Stealth Forest. Now, they are forward of his base, but unless the English player wants to go outright Longbow Rush, that's not going to be a threat. And it's unlikely that B is going to Longbow Rush through Stealth Forest against the French. It's a very difficult civ to do that against because you know you're going to be up against the French cavalry as quickly as possible. And you also have to blindly run slow-moving units for a Stealth Forest, risking being ambushed by said heavy cavalry at any turn. Yeah, looks like B is just going to be going for later timing. You can tell that by the fact he's got one person working on the council hall. I prefer this approach. I don't think you can go for hard and fast timing. I think something that got learned very early on at the release of AoE4 is that if you try to close the game in 10 plus, like, 10 to 12 minutes is the English against French, you're probably going to have like a 20% win rate. It's definitely a French-favored matchup at that timing. Later on in the game is when the English can really kick it in, though. Yeah, some fair assessments about Lenok's second gold being brutal. The thing is, his second gold isn't actually as brutal as you think. Like, you aren't going to be there as the English player quick enough. I also think this is very wallable. Like, it's deceitful. The forward wood spawns. The weird part for Lenok in this matchup is, historically, you'd say that forward wood spawn is good for the English player to exploit, because he can move in with longbows and block you on wood. But the fact that you're on Highview means you don't want to build longbows and go across the field early on. So actually, these forward wood lines are a beneficial defense for Lenok. And you'll definitely see that come into play, by the way, because when it really will matter is when both of them are around Castle Age and B tries to start pushing knights. These walls will stop him in his footstep. He won't get anywhere, basically. Meanwhile, on the other side, while Lenok won't necessarily be able to get the drop on B without him seeing, B has nowhere he can easily wall. So his defensive timing is going to be delayed. It's going to be much harder for him. I do like this detail from B, though, considering what's probably coming and the fact that you can't fight it directly. This is the correct choice. Go on the stone, get additional TCs. Probably he's going to pull that TC over towards maybe the deer. That's risky on the Stealth Forest. But the alternative is you play it like west side to secure the wood line and gold, which I don't think you necessarily need as much at this stage as the English player. We'll see where he wants to opt for it. Lenok, of course, will tech up first, because, of course, B was only using 1 and now 2 villages this entire time. And he's going to be insta-prep of the racks, because he knows it's going to be heavy cavalry first of all. Well, actually, we say that. Lenok hasn't even started the first one yet. Instead, Leenock is going for Wheelbarrow, and he's going for multi-TCs himself. So it looks like this might turn into a bit of a slower, more cruise mode early game. Now, if this does turn into just a TC race to boom, the French will have the edge here. They produce villages quicker. Also, their initial gathering is going to be better because they're going to be plopping these TCs down on deer stacks to inflate the early income. Late game, of course, the English start to win out because they'll be transitioning farms, etc. But there's the initial investment into farms sets you back. Because while the gathering rate at feudal age is slightly better than deer, you always have to calculate the wood cost initially, right? Even with a 50% discount, it's still a heavy hit to your economy. 37 wood is almost what one villager gathers in a minute. So if you start to map it out that way, and you say each farm gives gathering rate for one villager, even if it's slightly superior to deer, the issue is you're using 1 minute of time for a villager to secure a slightly better rate than deer for one villager, compared to your opponent who is then having 8 villages, 10 villages, however many, just on deer. And that's why I prefer this choice by B. He goes straight out with the TC drop on the deer. You do not want to be rushing farms here. This is much better as well because what this will give B is an optimal castle age timing, which means he gets a third TC. It's one very powerful play for the English. It's a good deviation. I think big shout out to Mister and Give You Anxiety. They were two of the first players I saw frequently doing it. Is if you play second TC on the deer and then rush castle afterwards, you can use the King's Pass to either bridge the gap and then set up farms, or you can even secure additional resources. Gets you to free TC effective with a very good castle age timing. And the logic behind this build is because you've gone free TCs and you escalated your eco early, you have enough wood to then make that awkward transition I just mentioned into farms. And you do so in castle age where you have options. That's the other difference. You're still going to have to take time to set up military, but if you consider the difference between delaying your feudal and playing prolonged feudal, setting up farms, you don't have great options. You have men at arms, you have spears, and you have longbows. If you make your way up to castle in a competitive time, yes, you still have this burden of I need to set up farms, but not only have you got more villages to go gather the wood required, but now add to that list of units that I can build. I can build knights. I can build crossbows. I can build castles to defend me. I could stonewall if I wanted to. Like, there's so many more options that open up by hitting castle age. Cheeky little woodlands coming up from B, actually. I like this. Just funnel points towards his TCs, right? He knows that French cavalry are likely to hit the field. Even if Leenock wants to TC boom, he wants some knights as well, typically. The crazy part, actually, is like Leenock is playing him like a fiddle right now. He hasn't built a single knight this entire game. I mean, we are 8.5 minutes in, and he's only built one horseman. Part of me feels like that might have been a misclick. So B got baited in the spears. Now, this was a nuclear deterrent. You know, there's a chance that your opponent just doesn't build knights when he sees the spears, but you kind of have to reveal the spears first. Otherwise, you have to reactionary drop a Rax, and you probably lose 2 to 3 villages to a knight. I do like that he's at least trying to find additional value in the midfield, but the arrow slit's already in place. It's going to be difficult now. We'll see if Lee wants to go for a third TC. I wouldn't be against it. It looks like he's gathering just a little bit of stone for the outpost upgrades, but you could get away with a free TC build here. You know that B's going to be targeting Castle Age, so your choice is either you build military units now and you be in a nuisance, or you go for your own third TC ahead of B's timing, and that means you'll be very much ahead, because not only will you have your third TC ahead of the English player, but each of these TCs is producing villages every 18 seconds instead of every 20. Which for those that want to know the maths, that's 10% faster. Pretty damn effective. Basic maths was pigeon. Everyone's like, wow, he can count to 20. Wow. Actually, it's a bit more sophisticated than counting. Now I'm going to stop. B. Now going to make his way up. It's going to be the King's Pass, and he chose to just build it behind his base. So didn't even choose to bridge the gap. There wasn't really any value here. You could argue maybe the King's Pass is better placed on the Gold Vein's right side, but this secures his wood line easier and shouldn't have too big of a difference overall, especially now that he's walled himself in. This is starting to look like the B that I'm used to seeing, actually. I remember in the early days, like whenever B would pick English, he plays like this. Even before people really kind of sussed out that the English were meant to be about hyper late game scaling, B always wanted late game. I remember doing a cast with BC where he like defined this. Like even back in the days of StarCraft, B liked this idea of playing into the late game and stripping all the maps away, this map resources away, and playing a finite game. And the English are definitely a civ that can do that, especially when you're given somewhat wallable maps. And to his credit, he's walled what should have been a difficult map. Because remember, we highlighted that his starting position was very open here. But meanwhile, in similar amounts of investment, you can see that Leenock is going for the long wall. Ooh. Now, there has been a pattern on the test server of trade now becoming the meta. And we're not on the test server. But I can't help but get this sneaking feeling that Leenock could start trading in Castle Age. He definitely has the format for it. Right, you got the trade post in the corner. You've walled off entirely. Yeah, this actually could be a trade game for the French. I think Leenock is thinking about how he wins this game 40 minutes plus instead of how he wins it in the next 15. Which is a smart way of thinking about this because B is very good at dragging a game if he needs to. And he wants to as the English. So if Leenock suspects there's a high percentile likelihood that they end up in Imperial Age together, he doesn't want to lose the game because he runs out of gold. And one big issue with Highview is there's very limited gold. You can see you've got your small stacks, but then like the fat stacks are in the center here. So you'd be in contested territory in an area where B will fight you, but with keeps dropped here. So it's actually a much better choice for Leenock to set up for trade now and slowly boom towards it over the next 20 minutes than 20 minutes from now say, oh no, now I need trade, and then have to rush the central gold veins and die over them. However, the French Knights may have just screwed with the plan there. Leenock didn't bring enough villagers to get this up. Oy, oy. So B's going to be in. And these English Knights, no pushover, they'll be able to two-tap down the Villies. Now, by the way, the reason why you don't go Chamber of Commerce over School of Cavalry, and I will always say you don't go Chamber of Commerce over School of Cavalry, is that while you get a marketplace quicker and you can maybe begin trading sooner, what you're sacrificing is a 20% faster production speed on all stables throughout the game. So I will, even if you want to go trade, even if that was your plan from very early on, you still 100% should be going for School of Cavalry. These Knights are still unanswered. You see Leenock was being gluttonous, so I am starting to think that was partially his plan. Like, get Castle Age and then maybe set up trade. Because these Knights weren't building beforehand. Well, Knights are going to at least be chased away. Farm transition underway for Leenock. B has now begun his own. He's been offsetting it, though, because he played on the south side of the deer. And, of course, because he guys walls up much quicker, he doesn't have to worry about the problematic scenario Leenock is now encountering. I mean, these archers are doing nothing. It's a mild tickler, my lord. Leenock, I think he just wants to get a keep drop in the center, maybe near the gold vein, set up a proxy base, look for a push in, possibly. The problem he now has is he can't trade. And you can see that B suspected something might be happening back here. He was checking this area for a pocket eco, but also if trade had been happening, he'd know about it now. So overall, just a rough game here for Lee. I mean, he went from negotiating his way to almost half the map to now a quarter of the map. He got relegated by 4 or 5 Knights. I mean, that's the potency the English can have if they hit their timings like this. So now you have to argue for a recovery point for Leenock here. And where the keep is justified. I actually think he needs a center keep, but he can't get there because the Knights are flooding the field. So he has to go for a defensive one at home. Like, Leenock is incredibly weak right now. He's farm transitioning. He only has 2 Knights in the field. If B knew how much of a Knight lead he has right now, he'd probably just be diving the base consistently. But right now, he's just parking in areas, paranoid about what his opponent's up to. That being said, if Leenock does push out too far, it's going to reveal exactly how weak he is. And at that point, I think you'll just see B double down on Knight spam and try to end the game. And apparently someone's making the argument against, like, you know, you should still go Chamber of Commerce because in the late game you get more money so you can build more stables. That's a very one-dimensional way of looking at it. You're not wrong, but it's not the whole truth either. What do we often see happens as the game scales? Like if you're in the defensive, for example, you have less space anyway, right? So to your whole idea that I can get more trade per trader, so it's better to go Chamber of Commerce instead of getting production speed of stables. What about in the interim? What about the build-up towards there? Like, initially, am I boxed in? Can I have enough room to build more stables? What happens when I get to the late game? If I've lost an extra quarter of the map, do I have room to build more stables? I think someone that is criminally underrated in late game is space. If you lose map control, you have limited space. So recovery becomes more difficult. So the idea of increased production rates becomes vastly more valuable. Raids are at least finally being answered out, and it looks like Leenock did get the key drop. Okay, this is a big deal. This is a really good castle placement. He secures fat stacks of gold. Now he doesn't have to worry about trade. His win condition pivots. If he did have trade in the mine, now it's at the back of the mine. And because he's got 16,000 gold in reserve, even if he has to go back to trade in, say, 10 minutes time, he's going to have enough gold to make that transition while still pushing knights in the interim. Speaking of pushing knights, B felt like he slowed down a little bit. He has still got the lead over Leenock. Looks like he went for a healthy mix comp of longbow, spears, and knights. The problem that B now has is he needs to get some siege. This keep is obnoxiously parked, and if you don't answer it, it's going to lead to a snowball effect where Leenock will be able to breach. Love this detail as well, because Leenock now has the stables in place around the keep. He's getting the discount via the influence. You can see there, 20% off means Military Academy is logical. Because Military Academy increases your production rate by 25%, and you've essentially offset the extra eco burden because of the keep's influence given the discounts. Pretty cool interaction, actually. One that doesn't necessarily get highlighted that much with the French, but it does matter a lot because your goal now as the French player is to reach pop cap. And you can see that Leenock's already struggling with that, but between the savings and the production speed, he can begin to close that gap that B's built. Some Sacred Site control would definitely go some distance to assisting with that as well. Did he go for the Monastery in the end? I don't think he did. Okay, yeah, he did. He only got one of the relics, though. That's because this knight has been parked on the second one, and because B's been such a nuisance in this area, Leenock never even really realized it. So he's going to lose another monk as more knights make their way in. He never completed the wall in, which is kind of perplexing here. He definitely had the opportunity to do so. Speaking of the walls, south side's about to be breached. That's a lot of knights coming through. That'll be a flood round onto the TC as well. The best thing Leenock could try to do here is redraw attention towards B's base. Because B isn't really phased by this keep yet, as it hasn't turned into a Siege Workshop location with Trebs. Part of the reason behind that, I think, is because Leenock just doesn't have vision. You can see how much of a nuisance these tree lines are. You'd have to come forward and drop outposts here. Even if he did, the way that B has configured his base, all you'd kill is blacksmiths. So the problem that Leenock now has is that B has pivoted to the left side. He's actually nowhere near the front line with his production. If these stables were on the front side, then B would be forced to contest at home. But instead, he gets the raid, and Leenock is going to be forced to mirror the movements in his own base. Knights willing to clash here. Interesting choice. Not really the optimal fight to be taken until the spears arrive. And now the ambush is going to come in. That's the deal breaker. Nice peel back as well. Love that detail. B, he pulls back the spears so that knights are not taking them out first. The bonus damage is coming through. Good fight for him in the end. Had to work hard for it. Leenock has to retreat away. B, we'll give quick pursuit. Rewall is going to come through. Looks like the villager has not been targeted at all. Oops. Meanwhile in the center, Sacred Sites continue to be capped. B, he's kind of being a nuisance here. Like, Leenock is addressing these fights with one big, strong force, but the problem is he's never getting the fight due to the fact it's mainly knights. It means that B's always going to sneak in, and he's doing that again on the right flank. Meanwhile, in the center, it looks like he's going to actually outmass the French here. Leenock didn't even notice he got auto-aggroed in there. Another good fight for B. And he's beginning to escalate. I mean, you can see the numbers. Leenock is the one with the opportunity to target Imperial Age here, but B's about to catch up. He's about to be pop-capped. And Leenock can't even think about Imperial, not with this happening. Knights are in again. Needs to rally back to base quickly. Try and cut them off. But if B chooses to just click them all to different locations, he could shut down the entire French economy right now. Just as it's setting up farms as well, which would be pretty painful. You can see him wrapping out. Sends in all the knights, leave the spearmen and longbow at home. And with this peel back, B is going to be able to access Imperial Age. I expect him to start saving now. He's about to reach pop cap anyway, so that's going to enable him further. Keep Drop also snuck in close to Leenox. The Knights will split up, waste and idle out the French in the meantime. And behind this, Leenox might be able to begin Imperial first, but unless he can get a good Red Palace drop, I don't think he gets as much value out of it as the English are about to. Especially with Network of Citadels now on the way for B as well. And Stonewall's taken the place of the Wooden Ones. Isn't going to make that mistake so many players do. He's going to create those funnel points. And this is frustrating for Leenox. It means that this powerful timing of French Knight Mass with Royal Bloodlines isn't going to be as impactful as it otherwise would be, as he's going to be stripped of a lot of options. Right now, the only option it feels like Leenox had for the last 10 minutes plus is defend, 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 defend. Continues to be the case. B is just missing the food required for his tech up. Leenox hasn't started yet. He's still lacking the gold. Knights is quite the burden, but it really is the big difference here is the eco. There it is, B ready to rock and roll. This is probably going to be the Wingard Palace in slow siege, which will take out the proxy base, and that's going to slow down Leenox's ability to reinforce because it's going to escalate the cost of doing so. Oh, wait, hello. Leenox starts at first. He goes for the Red Palace. This might be the worst civ to build Red Palace against, actually. So, Red Palace is, like, in theory, really good. It's an incredibly powerful tool. So, for those that don't understand, you have Arbalest emplacements instead of normally Archer emplacements. They do 60 damage each, and for each person garrison's side, it's an extra 60 damage shot. For those who don't know, buildings only have 50 range damage. So, a Red Palace can kill buildings as well as anything else. This is like bringing a shotgun to an air rifle fight. It is vicious. However, the issue with this build is that you're doing it against a civ that builds trebuchets. The civ that wants to build trebuchets the most because of the attack speed aura. It means that the Red Palace doesn't actually achieve much. It'll delay your opponent by maybe a minute, but nothing more. In fact, there's an argument that College of Artillery serves a better purpose here. Some battles can be won with the Red Palace on the logic that defense is better than offense, but I've got to say in the English-French matchup, with the way that they're now condensed and making similar formats, offense matters more. And the fact that you don't have Royal Cannons with additional damage, and your opponent has Trebuchets with additional attack speed, means that now B is in a very comfortable position in this game. And these English Knights, once again, wasting so much time, and Leenox still hasn't done the stone walls, so this is always going to be problematic for him. That's why he's never going to be going trade in this game as well. It's why he needs to hold in the center, because if he loses this gold, I actually think Leenox loses the ability to play long game here. He's already being heavily discounted by the fact that enclosures should be coming on the farms. And just to clarify for people, Siege does get the buff, the attack speed buff. You can see it right there. It's pretty nutty. The aura that does not affect Siege anymore is Yam. That's right. Mongols that feel like they're most irrelevant civ don't get the Siege benefit. Sad day for them. But yes, the Trebuchets do get the attack speed buff, which is pretty brutal. Although it be... yeah, that was lucky. Needs to start attacking the Red Palace. He should be able to siege this quickly, but weirdly enough, I don't even know if B noticed where it is. Has he really not noticed it? I mean, he just got attacked by it. He could easily be attacking ground right now, right? Would be the ideal play. Meanwhile, Trebuchets on the other side, now trying to breach on the east. B, he did stonewall the very south side, but didn't do anything for the center. So now I'm going to rectify that. Knights are going to be diving in, but remember, this is a Red Palace you're diving. Appropriately named, as it's going to make the battlefield run red with blood. And the walls are now going up, but the walls are slow. The Trebuchets are moving in position as well. They might get an opportunity to breach. This is going to be tight. He needs to commit to the right segment of the wall, but it looks like he might not. It's going to go up. B dodges death here. That was way too close for comfort, because 26 Knights breaking in here would have broke B. Instead, they now have to wrap around towards the keeps and towards the spears. Trebuchets, in the meantime, are starting to target down the red pass. That's not going to last much longer. That's why the Knights are going to have to dive in. An opportunity to take out the Trebuchets, which the English covet so much. Villager pull is good from B. He's trying to body block here. B doesn't repair. He'll at least clean up the Knights. Needs to get more Trebuchets out, though. Red Pass is going to live to fight another day. Walls have been re-breached, and the second wave comes in. Leenock, it's spread out time. B might be in quite a bind here. That's a lot of farms that are about to be ran red with blood. The corpses will fertilize, which seems appropriate because you feel like crap right now. Whew. I mean, the amount of villages you're about to lose actually is going to put you behind. Leenock, it's not even a quick chase down from B because he hasn't really got Knights anymore. Meanwhile, second wave is coming after this. Archers and Trebuchets starting to move in. We'll address the infrastructure next. The Knights are just going to appeal left, right, and center. So many villagers just being killed off. This is going to slow down B. He does at least have surplus food for the time being, so not the end of the world, but gold is a critical issue for B right now. Very limited in what he has. Oh my god, even more so with these Knights. 3 Knights at this stage. These are elite raw Knights, folks. If Leenock realizes it and takes out the gold straight away, B might not actually have any gold income whatsoever. Dicey. A lot of Trebuchet just got pushed by B. Did he get the Sharon projectiles, though? Because that could be a big deal here. No, so he can't use them like Mini Mangonels. Villagers are also in trouble, and B, I don't know where his army is right now. Did they chase north? Where are the rest? I mean, they look like they're on a coffee break right now. There's like 5 hand cannoneers here. This is not the way to fight. Oh, no. Leenock. Prime opportunity. The amount of trebuchets he's sniping out here is actually big. It once again slows down B. And Leenock getting great trades out of these archers. Not something you say frequently in the French and Imperial Age, but it's paying its due. Wood is also running out. Another issue for B down the line, and B does not have much in reserve either. He's going to be forced to go on the straggler trees, the stealth forest. Which doesn't feel good here. And if you remember, we did highlight this as a point for concern, actually. The wood was going to run out very quickly for B, and all of his backup woods after the first 2 were in stealth forests in the mid-map. You can see that Leenock intentionally played out of this, and this is the cool thing actually from Leenock. There was a double entendre to this. No, that's not the right use. I just like using French words. It's a French word, it'll fit. So he got the keep drop, which secured both of the golds. He got the red palace drop, which secured the gold and the wood. And now he's slowly crawling south side, which not only takes wood away from B, but then also covers his backup wood lines on the east side. It's a pretty crafty territorial play, actually. It's going to put him ahead of B, and B, the problem for him right now is he's going to need probably spears and some lombos in the mixer. He's not going to have the longevity for that. He has at least got food and gold for him. The problem, however, is even with many farms, like enclosures isn't going to be able to afford infinite armies of knights and hand cannoneers in this quantity. You will run out. Speaking of gold, it's not close to running out yet for Leenock. He's done one in the fat veins. He's still got another one. And let's keep in mind, credit to him. My boy Lee, look at the amount of gold he kept in reserve. He's got 2 small stacks back at home that he hasn't even touched yet. So trade's still a possibility if it comes to it, but he doesn't need to. Things have definitely slowed down. Both of them really don't want to lose these armies. They're just way too expensive to replace. Heavy amount of knights on one side, and then the 50-50 knights and hand cannoneers being invested in the other. Someone has to break soon. B wants to stop this gathering. He could even wrap north, but if he does so, it's very dangerous, actually. So he's going to try to march in, but good reactions coming out from Leenock, courtesy the outpost giving vision. However, Leenock once again left his base open. Knights are making their way in. Static Army's going to stand their ground and fight in the center. But the Knights are through. However, Leenock mirrors and matches. He's in. And it's so much better for Leenock because there's so much more spread out farm in one area. He can easily find what he needs to. Meanwhile, B, he'll take a gamble that all the farms on the backside and he'll be damn right for it, but he didn't know for sure. But keep in mind, the difference is that B, these farms are both his food and his gold source. Leenock's going to miss out on food, but gold's still going to be Gucci for him, and he has plenty of food in reserve. Spread out, look to butcher more here. Leenock still keeping his eco lead for the moment. Really needs some defensive troops, but it seems like he's getting none as it stands. Actually, that's a very big difference here. B is defending in his own base. Leenock is not. He's just letting his villagers lock after themselves. Their fate be whatever it may. B, he's at least sweeping across the base. The correct move to make here. Could be utilizing line formation as well. He'll club down even more villagers. Hankan is eventually going to reach down. The trade-off for Leenock is because he kept his army in the center instead of at home, he's taking out the keeps in the center. And the trip count actually looks very good for him. Not so good for the English. Knights are finally going to arrive on the defensive, so that's going to start to clean up the remaining in Leenock's base. And after all that, he does keep the villager lead here. Might extend it more so, considering he's found even more of B's villagers working on the wood. And what a play out of Leenock. With his superior vision in the center, he scouts the move, mirrors it ahead of time, and then doesn't overreact at home. He realizes that he can afford to replace, and any villager lost for him on the farms hurts him less than it hurts the English. Because if you think about the maths involved in this, you know, with the influence alone on gathering food, it's much better for the English. And then the farms enclosures, it means that any villager you trade out and lose one at home, it's a beneficial trade for Leenock. That's why he was willing to sacrifice this many. Yeah, you can highlight Leenock has no food, but he actually does. He still has 4K surplus. So this sets him back with all the idle time, but now he gets back to gathering. That's the cool thing about Leenock's play. B was always going to build infinite food. The goal with this raid by Leenock wasn't to kill the food supply, it was to kill the gold supply. And he did slow that down. But now, yeah, Leenock did lose out on a lot of food. He didn't build his surplus. But he had enough in reserve that he was able to afford it. That was the cool play. I think he had about 8K in reserve when this raid came in. If it was low, right? Like if it was his income number, if he was 1 or 2K reserve, then Leenock would have had to have reacted back in his base. But he could afford 1 to 2 minutes of idle time on all those farms because he built up surplus. This is how you should use surplus, by the way. It's very infuriating watching people build 20, 30, 40,000 food and not doing anything with it. The thing that Leenock done here is he understood that this had to be a trade and that he would benefit more in the interim from it. However, although it's a good start, it's not enough on its own. Leenock needs a lot more than this because this is still the late game. It's still the English. And their economy is still going to end up better than yours long term. Especially now that the gold is being denied. Proxy base alongside it. Lee on his way with the army. Spears, archers, not that many knights. Seems he's cut down on the quantity there. Leenock, he needs to be the aggressor here. He needs to dictate where these fights occur. Not a good start losing the trebuchets like this, though. They are going to be freebie as well. No cannon emplacements to help him. However, he's at least going to trade out with other trebuchets. Belong to the English. B is going to lose 2 for the price of 2. Attack speed is going to be here, though. Not a fight that Leenock wants to be taken. And what? No, Leenock didn't know about the walls. He has no vision. I mean, that's going to be Nobunaga's cavalry situation right there. They're all going down. Half of the cavalry battalion is gone. Hand cannoneers are in position to trade out. Archers aren't going to be able to hold against this many spearmen and hand cannoneers. Army's going to be a wipe. And Leenock, if he has to go on the defensive here, he loses the game. He never walled himself in, and they're in again. And this time it's going to sting. Last time, he had almost 10K food surplus built up. This time, it's half that. This time, the damage is going to last. And B behind this is actually winning the center fight. That was the difference last time. Leenock, he traded cavalry into each other's base, but he was winning the center fight. He just lost the center fight, and now he's going to lose his backup. This is the beginning of the end for Leenock. He was never able to wall himself in. These raids should never have been happening so freely for him. But B, somehow, time and time again, despite the fact that this was the bane of Leenock's existence for the last 25 minutes, Leenock never walled. The classic statement we get to say, it feels like, of Lee. And B, now that he's making his way into the base, with more hand cannoneers, and probably a second layer of knights behind this, you can't help but feel Leenock's time is limited. His access to gold is limited. Without gold at this stage, I mean, your comp is nothing. You can't even match the English Knights anymore. This game is done. Great play by B. He understood what his win condition was. He looked for that late timing, and he set up for it well. And when he arrived in Castle Age, the key detail here is that he understood the possibility the French would try to trade, and he took away half of Leenock's map control to prevent it. Leenock at that stage has next to no options. The keep play in the center is a good one, but critically the issue for Leenock here is there's never a real breach point that leads to a snowball effect. He couldn't get the proxy base online. He couldn't mass enough troops. B's economy was just too powerful at this stage of the game, which is so often the case when you see the English and French match up. Either the French come in a late game with a very big early game lead, or the English are gradually going to claw out a victory, and there's no doubt that B has clawed out a victory here. Love the choice for Leenock to go archers, by the way. I think this helped him a lot of this game, but without any way of doing serious damage to the economy, death was an inevitability for Leenock.